Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me today are Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells. We're the editors of Manufacturing.net and Industrial Equipment News, and we each have more than 20 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Each week, we take the biggest stories in the manufacturing industry and discuss the implications they have on the industry moving forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by giving the podcast a positive review on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, Anna, or David at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. We are also live every Thursday, so subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can get a notification and join us live. Jeff, how are you doing this week?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm feeling good. Chipper. You know what? I'm chipper.
Chipper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
Ready for the holidays?
Ready for the holidays, letting it sink in. We're burning a lot of pine-scented candles.
Yes, it's my favorite thing.
Right? Just, we threw a little wild card in there with a candy cane scented one. Still good.
Very nice.
Yeah, I like it.
I approve.
Ambiance. How are you doing this week?
Doing great. Also very excited for the holidays. I think have gotten through like 75% of the nonsense errands that I've had to do. Try to fit like 10,000 errands into one week at the end.
Yeah.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
It's I've finally made peace with the fact that I'm at that point in my life where I will go run an errand and realize and understand that I will not do at least one of the crucial reasons that brought me out on that errand. Mm-hmm. Just like I need, if anything, only these 5 things. And I know that I'll get in the car and then get halfway home and be like, come on. I need to write it 5 different places. But that's okay. You know what? Aging, exhaustion, holidays.
It'll get done.
Yeah, we'll get it. All right. Well, before we jump into our first story this week, we have a word from our new sponsor, Laserfiche. Generative AI is turbocharging modernization across the industrial sector by saving time, processing data, and increasing worker productivity during the implementation of new tools and technologies. This new white paper from Manufacturing.net, How AI Tackles Manufacturing's Top 5 Implementation Challenges, gives you the 5 key areas throughout the industrial enterprise where generative AI knocks over implementation hurdles. So download this exclusive paper from Manufacturing.net right now. Our first story this week. Ford scraps fully electric F-150 Lightning. On Monday, Ford said a fork in the road forced it to make a bold and somewhat unexpected choice. The automaker is bailing on its bold EV plans, and it has many billions of reasons why. Ford has spent billions of dollars on electrification. The company lost $13 billion on EVs since 2023 and now expects to take a $19.5 billion hit in Q4, largely because of its decisions to not move forward with EVs. The cuts include the F-150 Lightning electric pickup truck. The program will be unplugged, and Ford's focus will shift to an extended range version of the gas-powered model. Ford will also switch up manufacturing. The Tennessee Electric Vehicle Center will become the Tennessee Truck Plant and now make lower-cost gas-powered trucks. Ford still expects half of its global volume to be hybrids and full EVs by 2030. This year, it was only 17%. Jeff, CEO Jim Farley says this is a customer-driven shift. He says, quote, the operating reality has changed, unquote. Did the operating reality completely change, or is this more of a final nail in the coffin?
Neither.
Okay.
It should be either one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, the operating reality didn't change. This was all about forecasting. There was a great unknown. We've talked about this many, many times as far as EV goes, and everybody sort of overshot on this. Mm-hmm. Ford's not the only one. It was everybody collectively. But he is right when he says it's a customer-driven shift. This is absolutely driven by the customer. When you look at the sales numbers, compared to the projections, I mean, they were looking at making 150,000 of these Lightnings per year. Mm-hmm. They came out with about a total of 60,000 total.
Yeah.
And that is based on the customers, and that's smart, and that's the way it goes. What I struggle with a little bit is the fact that they're going completely away from an all-electric truck. I think that's a huge mistake.
Yeah.
You can still keep your toe in the water. I understand that these are higher cost vehicles. The margins aren't as good, and that's what's hurting these guys as well as some other folks we're going to talk about in a little bit when it comes to EVs. But to completely turn your back on it, which is what they're saying here, I think is a big mistake. I think it's a mistake for a couple of reasons. Look at somebody like Rivian, okay? Now, it's weird when you look at their numbers because they look about delivered versus sales, okay? So they had 2 straight years where they delivered over 50,000 electric trucks. Rivian I'm talking about.
Yeah.
A lot more than they did with the F-150 Lightning.
Yeah.
This year they're going to deliver about 40,000. Now some of those were back ordered. They only sold about 25,000 of those.
Yeah.
But again, Rivian is still in the game. And they're scaling their operations accordingly. Look at what Chevy is doing with the Silverado. They're not trying to produce tens of thousands of these vehicles. They're more in the 5 to 10,000 because they know that eventually this is going to be the way they want to go. So for Ford to completely turn their back on it with this type of market sort of penetration out there already, it's going to make their job a lot harder down the road. Plus, when you expand beyond the U.S. and you look globally, there's a lot of numbers out there looking at the fact that places like China are actually very open to heavy-duty, all-electric trucks.
Yeah.
So you're missing out on a big opportunity there as well. Now, look, I don't have any, deep insight into the inner workings of Ford's financials, but if you're going to put this much energy into introducing a product, I think to turn your back on it this quickly is a mistake.
Yeah. Like, I mean, kind of Toyota's model, right? Where it's like, hey, we're like heavily invested in hybrids. We still do gas powered and we do a little bit of EVs. And then kind of as the market shifts, so does your focus.
Well, and it's okay to scale back.
Yeah.
I just don't like flipping the switch. I think that's a mistake. What's also interesting is when we were doing this, it kind of took me back. And I don't know how I remembered this because it was like 200 episodes ago.
Yeah.
But when we were talking about when Ford split into Model E and Blue.
Yeah.
And where would you rather be? It was actually you and Andy and I, when I look back on it. Thanks to Gemini, they could actually tell me it was episode 57 at the 38-minute mark.
Oh, nice.
When we were talking about this.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the stuff we were mentioning at that point really panned out because there was a lot more favoritism, if you will. The favored child was the Model E.
Yeah.
And which team would you rather be on? There was one guy on that panel who may have said, pump the brakes a little bit here on the electric stuff. The blue team may still be a good place to be.
Yeah.
Pretty smart guy.
Yeah.
Good looking guy. Been around for a little bit.
Andy?
And actually, you had a really good comment too when you think about how everything that was said here and how they're looking to transition this to the Tennessee truck plant. Yeah. One of the comments you made offhandedly was, well, maybe they'll just have a division that's like big trucks.
Yeah.
And you know what? Kind of what they're doing here.
Well,
so.
I mean, I feel like everything that has happened with the EV market, you have pretty much called along the entire way because it seems like we're either all in or we're all out a lot of times in this sort of knee-jerk reaction. Do you think this hurts the F-150 brand at all? Is this more of like just kind of like a dark times? Or is this like, hey, there was a failure with the F-150 brand and it could, hurt it a little bit?
I don't think it hurts the brand.
Yeah.
I just think it hurts the potential of the brand going down the road.
Yeah.
I just think they're really hamstringing themselves right now.
Okay. Well, and I guess one of the things, Anna, that we've talked about a lot and we've all kind of brought up is just how the pace of change, like how fast we were running towards this EV future and whether or not that was going to be realized and whether or not that was practical at all. I mean, is this just reality setting in terms of EV adoption?
I think so. I mean, I was not super surprised to see this, I guess. We talked about this a couple weeks ago about the fire at that Novelis plant and how Ford had deprioritized the F-150 Lightning in favor of the F-150 because they had limited supply of aluminum and they needed to do something. They needed to put something on ice, and so they chose the vehicle that wasn't selling. Yeah. And at the time, analysts were saying this vehicle might be on the chopping block. I thought that in the article that we're covering, the AP had interviewed a guy named Sam Fiorani. He's a VP at Auto Forecast Solutions. And he summed it up in a way that I thought was really appropriate for what we have been saying for a really long time. He said, quote, "The 1-2 punch of the public's slow EV adoption and the Trump administration's softer stance on fuel economy and emissions has encouraged every automaker to rethink their current direction. Electric vehicles are still the future, but the transition to EVs wait for it, was always going to take longer than automakers have been promising the public.
Yeah.
Which we have said so many times.
Yeah.
Like, again, it's always been an issue, as you're saying, of forecasting. It's always been an issue of expectations. I think, there's a long sales cycle with automotive. We talked about that a lot. If people are reaching that point where they want to buy, and the average vehicle on the roads today is like 12 years old, people aren't buying new vehicles every year or two, despite all the money that's being pumped into EVs. So when they reach that point, there's still a lot of boxes that need to be checked for many people, like range requirements, infrastructure issues, options, just generally options,
Yeah.
And, I appreciate you pointing to Rivian, but I would say that I do think that Ford's F-150 buyer and Rivian's like premium EV truck buyer, that's a different buyer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's certainly possible that Ford is looking at this and they're saying, we have two EVs. The Mach-E is selling better than the truck.
Yeah.
We know that people want our gas truck. And, the money that they've invested into the transition is not completely lost just because they're shelving this product potentially for now.
Yeah.
But, as they're talking about these extended range EVs, which are actually hybrids.
Yeah.
But the hybrid, the battery development that they need to support these vehicle lines, which people are interested, obviously, in using less gas.
Mm-hmm.
They will use this. They will use some of the R&D. They will use the battery stuff that they've worked out, everything that they've learned from building this Lightning and this Mach-E, they will use. I was a little surprised, to be honest, that they went with the pickup to begin with, because to me, and if you look at the market now, what's being widely absorbed by the American people, what people are buying are like SUVs and crossovers.
Yeah.
Like the pickup trucks, I think, is just a little bit more of a niche buy.
Yeah.
Especially when you have to look at are they being used on construction sites? Is their infrastructure available? Is the range long enough for that? If they're carrying a load, does that reduce the range? In the winter, does that reduce the range? There's just not quite enough there in my mind. There are enough limitations there. I think that's served as a barrier to that type of vehicle. But like I said, maybe this R&D will boost the hybrid development for them over time, and maybe the Lightning will come back eventually.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say just a couple things there. You're right. Right now, not the same buyer. That isn't to say where that could be down the road. Rivian isn't going to stay with the same truck. And I think this does open up a new potential opportunity for them to develop an F-150 type offering down the road, because right now it's not as robust. It's not a job truck, if you will.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say, in a lot of areas, though, the way that the F-150 type of truck is used, or whether it's a Silverado or whatever, is very similar in terms of that's just your vehicle.
Yeah.
You don't need to be hauling stuff. You don't need to be going to a job site. That is your vehicle. So again, I just think there's some missed opportunities potentially.
I see that, but also how long do they sit on it if it's not selling? Just because that niche is there doesn't mean that they want to, hole up a bunch of capital on this project because they're not selling.
You don't have to make 60,000 of them. Make 5 to 10 of them. Those you can sell.
But
you're staying relevant. You're staying present.
Maybe there's capacity considerations and tooling and all that stuff. I mean, maybe they need the space.
Well, and Rivian's actually going the other way with the R2. They're trying to get lower costs. It'll be interesting to see what Ford can do in terms of coming up with a lower cost truck alternative. I'm curious as to what's going to become of this Ford Model E division. A lot of that $19.5 billion in Q4 special charges, that includes restructuring the Ford Model E or EV division, and it could be a troubling time for a lot of people that are currently chose that side or were put to that side, I guess. Ford still wants that division profitable by 2029. All the plants are going to be retooled. This week alone, I reported that Ford also backed out of a $6.5 billion deal with LG Energy Solutions that we're going to make 500,000 batteries per year. Just talking about how this also has sort of ripple effects throughout the supply chain. Last week, Ford backed out of that joint venture with South Korean battery manufacturer SK On. They were going to build multiple EV battery factories across the U.S., and it's kind of like a divorce where, Ford got Ford got the 2 in Kentucky, and SK On got the 1 in Tennessee. But it's still going to make a limited amount of batteries for Ford. I don't know. I just think that when it comes to this market, what I think a couple of people mentioned in comments on the sites, basically that Ford never did a great job of marketing this for workers. Like, it wasn't, they tried to market it to both people that use the truck as a tool and people that it's just their day-to-day commuter. It should have been all in on you use it for work all day, you plug it in at night. And they think that should have just been the initial rollout, and they think they kind of fumbled that. And I tend to agree. But I do think that we will see an F-150 Lightning again in the future, maybe as things change from a regulatory basis. All right, our next most popular story. Volkswagen announces unprecedented plant closure. VW seems to be seeing clearly now and looks to remove at least one obstacle in its way. Volkswagen plans to establish an R&D hub at its transparent factory in Dresden, Germany. The realignment will phase out vehicle production at the factory by the end of the year. And according to the New York Times, this is the first time VW has closed a plant in Germany, ever. Transparent Factory Dresden is famous for being transparent. It has glass walls. The 88-year-old company opened the factory in 2001 and used it to make the ID3. Well, the company is shuttering the ID3 production line next month to make way for research. The first joint research projects with the Technical University of Dresden will begin in the middle of next year. The campus is going to focus on AI, robotics, microelectronics, and chip design, among others. The Dresden plant currently employs 230 workers. VW says some will retire. Others will move to other German plants. The company's CEO, Thomas Schaefer, said the move was, quote, absolutely necessary. And part of the cuts that will include 730,000 fewer vehicles annually by 2028 and 35,000 layoffs by 2030. And VW reported a 33% decline in operating income for the first half of 2025 and said tariffs are playing a big role, adding some $1.5 billion in costs. Is this closer to just one of several hard choices, or is this just one of several hard choices that we expect to see from the automaker going forward?
Yes, I think so. I mean, while you can say this was unprecedented, it's certainly not unexpected. Mm-hmm. The writing has been on the wall here. These 35,000 job cuts that are mentioned in the story, these were negotiated with the union in Germany and announced in late 2024. And at the time, this was actually like the better deal of what was being proposed by Volkswagen. In fact, the negotiations were described as grueling, and the union called it a Christmas miracle when they reached the agreement because it pushed the site closures and the layoffs out a little bit instead of being immediate.
To the next Christmas.
Right. So there was nothing immediate, and VW had dropped some initial demands that they had for a 10% wage cut at that time. So the union saw it as a win, but really what it was kicking the can down the road a little bit, and that's what we're seeing play out here. So at the time, VW said that these revisions that they had to negotiate with the union were, again, necessary. That word was used, necessary, for that company to compete with lower-cost Chinese rivals, which we've seen impact American manufacturers as well, lackluster demand in Europe, and they also mentioned slower than expected adoption of electric vehicles. None of this has changed, unfortunately, in the past year, though some new challenges have also cropped up. You've seen tariffs being applied here. VW sunk a lot of R&D and production resources into their ID Buzz van, an electric van, and that is built in Europe. So now that's tariffed at 15%. It's not selling well in the U.S. All in all, Volkswagen's Q3 sales decreased 6% year over year. So they're having a tough year. They knew they were going to have a tough year. Mm-hmm. And so this stuff was already this is like dominoes that are being lined up, and then they're just going to start flicking them over.
That were scheduled to fall.
So for to look at like 200 something jobs and this unprecedented closure of this plant because they've never done that before, like buckle up because there's a lot more to come, unfortunately, from VW here in Germany.
Well, that was one thing that was surprising to me. Like they're nearly 90 years old, founded in Germany, and this is the first time that a plant was closed. Like that is a historic achievement. But as you see in the legacy of any long manufacturing company, there are ups and downs, and VW is down. Jeff, we recently covered the story about the symbol of hope that restored VW bus. And I just thought, like, we're going to need more than just these, like, singular symbols of hope to kind of reestablish faith in the company, because I feel like VW has taken strays from all different parts of the industry, like the tuner community that says VW lost its way with why that kind of community was interested in their vehicles, in terms of affordability, in terms of features that people wanted. It just kind of, for lack of a better term, really lost its way, and maybe still a little bit of fallout from Dieselgate. Like, there are a lot of things working against VW right now.
No, I think the Dieselgate stuff can't be understated. I mean, anytime you're $35 billion loss in terms of legal fees and settlements, that's going to have an impact for a while.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's what really fueled this huge transition, the $130 billion they then really put towards EV development both now and in the future. So they are locked into EVs. So you do get faced with very difficult decisions, because what's weird here is typically there's a sales problem. Now, VW, obviously, they're not selling as many as they want, but I think the bigger issue is they're just not profitable. With a lot of these electric vehicles, in order to get them to move, they're selling them at a price point that does not allow them to make a lot of money off of it, very simply.
Yeah.
And that's what's really coming into what they're really feeling here now. They had a cash flow pinch to begin with. They made this huge pivot to electric vehicles, made a lot of headlines with what they were investing and what they're doing, I think, to really get away from that tarnished image that Dieselgate brought. But now they're not making money on these vehicles that they sell, and they do have to make some of these really dramatic moves. And I think that headline was accurate. I mean, this is unprecedented. We see a lot of these plant closures, and it's like, well, this happens. This is something that we can kind of just understand. But this was different for this to happen at VW, and just comes back to, again, a lot of bad business decisions, and I think pivoting too quickly, as opposed to letting things play out a little bit.
Well, and I was surprised that if you looked at the technologies they're pursuing with this new R&D focus at the Transparent Factory, we're talking about AI, we're talking about process innovation rather than design innovation. And that kind of stood out to me because, yes, you do need to find more efficient ways to make cars, but you also need to make sure you're making cars people want and can afford. And when I heard that, I was just like, well, okay. They're keeping the really cool building, and they're going to try to improve things, but we'll see. I don't know. It's I'm always encouraged when people do continue to invest in R&D when things are down, but you need to make sure it's in things are going to help your company stay alive. But
yeah, I mean, it's a more and more crowded marketplace with vehicles lasting longer. I mean, there's just fewer sales to obtain. Out there, and then when you already have this type of image and type of issues that they're having internally. Yeah. Well,
I mean, on the counterpoint to that, Anna, is like you've been kind of brand loyal to VW over the years. Like, have you felt that they've sort of lost touch with what you were looking for as a consumer, or are you kind of still in the vein of like, no, they've met your needs?
I mean, this is, I think, anecdotal, but I bought a few VWs over the years, and we have an Atlas. We're happy with that vehicle. I have an electric vehicle, and despite my last comments about the Ford F-150 Lightning, I'm very happy with my electric vehicle, so I don't have any issues there. But the market is not friendly to that right now, unfortunately. Yeah. And if you look at what happened with a lot of automakers selling EVs in the last couple of years, not to get down a rabbit hole, but the depreciation has been very high on them because of that tax credit.
Yeah.
And so now that the tax credit is gone, you're going to see a lot of very well-priced, very lightly used EVs on the resale market, and really no incentive to buy new ones for like at least the next year or two.
Yeah.
So that's going to be another, I think, baton to the knee of the auto industry that are like trying to sell electric vehicles over the next 2 years is not going to help at all.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. I guess that's something that was kind of talked around, but just, I guess I was surprised you have to know that those incentives are not going to be around forever. And you need to kind of like get closer to profitability without those incentives. And it just seemed like once they went away, like the market just evaporated.
Everyone's prices were still up here. And then, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what they have to do in terms of pricing to remedy that.
Yeah, kind of close that gap.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of companies use the tariffs as a sort of an excuse. I think that's very real here. I think that is a very genuine concern.
Well, and I mean, Anna kind of just mentioned it a little bit, but like there is a real, I mean, particularly for Ford, the Novelis plant that has to have had a significant impact in it as well.
Definitely.
All right. Our most popular story this week. Anheuser-Busch to close 3 U.S. breweries. Bud, Anheuser-Busch's U.S. brewing footprint is getting light.
Ooh, David.
The company is cutting 3 factories, impacting some 475 workers. The brewer sold its plant in Newark, New Jersey, to property development firm Goodman Group, and it's going to close breweries in Merrimack, New Hampshire, and Fairfield, California, early next year. Production is going to be moved to other U.S. breweries, and the company insists that these cuts will help Anheuser-Busch to, quote, invest even more in its remaining operations. The brewer has announced nearly $300 million in U.S. facility upgrades in Georgia, upstate New York, Houston, and its flagship in St. Louis. The workers will be offered positions at other facilities, as well as relocation stipends and training. Still, the closures are a bit of a sad end to these historic breweries. The Fairfield Brewery has been in operation for 49 years. Merrimack was established 54 years ago, and the Newark Brewery, established in 1951, is Anheuser-Busch's oldest outside of St. Louis. Anna, this one's for you. If big beer can't reverse consumer trends, can we expect more of these closures?
Well, I mean, it's certainly always about consumer trends in every industry and every move, right? That's, of course, a factor.
Yeah.
But to me, this felt more like Anheuser-Busch looking at their cost structure, seeing that they had these facilities that are old and in higher cost of living areas, and making decisions based on that strategically. You look at like a moving from higher cost. Okay, so it's been documented for many years that manufacturing is exiting urban areas and higher cost areas. So you have these plants in California, New Hampshire, New Jersey, very high cost areas to be. You're moving those jobs and that production to Missouri. I think that's like a pretty easy cost calculation to make there. To me, that's what it felt like. When they talk about these job protections and offering relocation packages to all these folks, it looks like it's not a cost-cutting thing. But to me, and you look at the data around relocation and how effective that actually is, get this. So it turns out that relocation rates peaked in the late 1980s when nearly a third of workers would move for new jobs. Today, worker relocation rates are less than 3%.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I do think that these types of offers, it's easy to say you'll relocate 475 people, understanding that maybe 15 of them will take that offer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you can just kind of severance them out, and that's a layoff, you know? So it's, to me, this feels like cost cutting, and I don't know how much it's a market trend factor or how much of it is just trying to get out of those high tax states with, they sold their property in Newark, New Jersey. That plant is right across from the airport in Newark. That's probably a pretty valuable piece of property that they just sold.
Oh, yeah.
So to free up some capital and move some production to St. Louis, I mean, that probably makes sense.
I think it makes a lot of sense. And talking about how the beer market is changing, Jeff, until now, would you have ever believed that what the biggest opportunity is for beer makers would be the NAs or non-alcoholic category? It's wild to me.
Well, even that, or even just the seltzers or non-beer products for Anheuser-Busch. It's interesting, consumers are buying less beer.
Yeah.
I'm not, but other folks are. So it is interesting to see how this has evolved and changed with time. And that's part of a company like Anheuser-Busch to stay on top of that and to adjust as necessary. So just to clarify, though, this is the facility when we were going in and out of Newark in another life, right by the airport.
Oh, yeah.
There's that one.
Well, and I mean, yeah, as we were going in and out of that Newark airport, I would always go in knowing that I was going to have a big expense bill coming back because it is just a higher cost of living out there, much to your point, Anna. And it really, a lot of it made sense to me. That was the first thing that stood out to me when I looked at all those territories.
Well, what's interesting, too, is when you look at these 3 facilities that they're shutting down, not to say the only product, but they were beer exclusive facilities. Okay. And right now that is a very tough place to be. And I think this is sort of a case study or best practices, whatever you want to say, to any worker or any community that's looking to bring manufacturing in, is to make sure that there is a little bit more diversity in terms of the types of products being made at these facilities.
Yeah.
If you're going to give out these big tax breaks and you're going to try to recruit these companies to come in, make sure you're not tied to one vertical market. Now you may think, well, there's light beer, there's regular, there's all these different beers that they were making there, all these brands. It's the same kind of consumer, though, at the end of the day. So I think when they talk about integrated production capabilities, that's something we need to look at, too, before we start spending a lot of money and resources to bring some of these manufacturers in. Let's make sure there are diverse product lines being offered so that you're not losing 475 people at a crack.
Well, and when they say that all the work will be spread out amongst its other facilities, that to me is when it stands out as it's like real contraction in the market, because it's like we can absorb this no problem in other places. And Jeff, with your experience in food manufacturing, do you know, is it easier or harder to make NA beer? So is it just like, do you still make normal beer and then you take the alcohol out to make NA?
Well, it's fermented different. I mean, I'm not going to get too chemically based here.
No, I'm just curious because like is it more expensive to make an NA?
It's less expensive because the process is you're cutting out a step.
Okay.
You're cutting out the fermentation element of it. So if you're removing a production step, it is going to be less expensive. You know, one thing that wasn't brought up here too with all this beer is just aluminum cans, glass bottles. You know, you kind of wonder too if you're going to different places with all that stuff. Sometimes it's easier to buy it all, bigger bulk, bigger quantities going to one place too. I wonder if how big of a role maybe that could have played in some of their cost cutting as well.
Well, I think it all plays a role because, I mean, as you frequently mention when we're talking about this industry is how close the margins are. You know, according to Craft Brewing Business, a trade journal, they said beer is, quote, in free fall. The Beer Institute shows that NA beer, this was the bright spot to me, though. Like, as I was looking up, it was like doom, gloom. And then at the bottom, they're like, but NAs. And I was just like, oh, okay. Like, I thought it was going to be marginal. But according to the Beer Institute, NA beer is up 22% year to date, 16% over the past 12 months. There is a 30.8% year over year surge. That was as of July 2024. And what also surprised me was on-premise growth is up 26.4% in 2025. And I guess that's surprising to me because, I mean, we're going back a couple years, a handful, if you will, with my experience in the bar and grill industry. But like the NA crowd was the two old timers at the end of the bar that just drank together their 2-0 duels, you know, like one every 2 hours, just hanging out. But now that is just, it's huge. Like Gen Z and millennials are driving demand. 61% of Gen Z and millennials say they'd choose a non-alcoholic version of their favorite beer. 57% said that they would stay longer at bars if they had better NA options. And I was, I don't know, that kind of stood out to me. But I mean, I'm not a beer guy. I'm not an NA beer guy. But I do know that there are times where we go out and I don't feel like drinking. And if they have a solid mocktail list or something other than like, you know, when you go to a bar and you ask if they have anything that's NA, and they basically give you that giant Pepsi plastic cup that's like a big glaring, I'm definitely not drinking and ask me why target. Whereas instead you get a mocktail and it's just like, what are you drinking? No, I don't know. It's just something off the menu. Like, I don't know. Those things have a real impact on consumers and keeping them in the establishment. But I was surprised. Like, those numbers are huge. Like 57% of Gen Z and millennials say that they'd stay at a bar longer if they had better NA options. I don't know. I thought that was surprising.
Yeah, that is, I mean, definitely different than when we were growing up, I guess, when I was a kid.
Back in my day.
Yeah. Just like, what is this? It's an 18 and older bar. How do they get away with it? None of it's boozy? Whatever. That's what they want. All right. Well, before we jump into, in case you missed it, we have another word from our sponsor, Laserfiche. Generative AI is turbocharging modernization across the industrial sector by saving time, processing data, and increasing worker productivity during the implementation of new tools and technologies. So this new paper from manufacturing.net, titled How AI Tackles Manufacturing's Top 5 Implementation Challenges, gives you the 5 key areas throughout the industrial enterprise where Gen AI knocks over implementation hurdles. So download it right now. I'm going to give you a minute. Live chat, body copy. You found it? Good. All right. In case you missed it, stories that weren't as popular on the sites, but still could impact the industry going forward. I'll go first this week. I chose a story, largest U.S. transformer manufacturer faces nearly $1 million in OSHA fines. Last week, OSHA announced more than $986,000 in safety violations for the largest transformer manufacturer in North America. In June 2025, OSHA visited Virginia Transformer Corporation's, or VTC's, plant in Pocatello, Idaho. This was a follow-up inspection after finding cranes used to handle heavy loads with faulty brakes and switches. It's bad. Things apparently didn't go well, and OSHA cited the company for 53 serious and repeat violations, like a lack of machine guarding and PPE, as well as exposing workers to fall hazards. Now, we've done plenty of safety stories in the past, but I chose this one because safety has been an ongoing issue with VTC's facilities. According to OSHA's database, this company has faced 10 OSHA actions just this year. These citations stemmed primarily from the health and safety issues at plants in Roanoke and Troutville, Virginia, and some were corrected during the inspection. Others were settled afterwards. I also chose this story, and many might remember that this was, Jeff, this was your, in case you missed it, last week or a couple weeks ago, but the transformer supply chain is a problem for our grid. You know, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory estimates that the U.S. has about 60 to 80 million high voltage distribution transformers in service. More than half are more than 33 years old, many already exceeding their lifespans. Replacing them has also become costly, time consuming, and this certainly isn't going to help. I mean, VTC recently announced expansion plans in Rincon, Georgia. Let's just hope things are a little bit safer there. The company heavily promotes its lead times, and I chose this story because, yes, the transformer problem is real and affecting our grid, but we need to make sure that we are doing it the right way going forward and not cutting corners. Jeff, I don't know if you had a chance to check out this story, but I was surprised by many things. The size of the fine, the number of violations, the history, and sometimes, you know, it seems like sometimes once there's an initial OSHA interaction, they either seem to really escalate as there are further investigations, or they go down as there's, you know, sort of changes made across the board.
No, this one was on my radar for sure too, especially after that story we talked about last week. And I think this is just, of course this is going to happen, right? When you're under this much pressure and this much demand to deliver your product, there's an overwhelming need for it. You're promoting your lead times. So what happens? People move faster. They're not paying attention to all the blocking and tackling and all the little things that need to take place in order to be safe on the job site, in order to deliver your product the proper way.
Yeah.
All of these things always come together whenever it's just one of the biggest parts of these safety concerns that we always run into is people going too fast and moving too quickly and not taking all these safety considerations into putting them into place. And this ends up impacting not just this facility, not just this company, not just these workers. It impacts everybody because we need this stuff to happen to help keep our grid moving along and keeping pace with all the demands that it's under right now.
Well, and we don't know. I mean, we talk about how a lot of these comments are anecdotal, but one person commented on the video, Anna, I once had a boss who would not only fail to lock out the machine while repairing it, he would be taking parts off while the machine was still running.
Ugh.
Like, national need and demand, skyrocketing demand aside, you got to lock out that machine and do it safely because it is not worth the risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's scary to consider too that there's all this expansion taking place, and this is what kind of a steward they're being currently with their current plans. Like I was reading about an investment they're making in Atlanta area, so this must be the Rincon story, but they said they're creating 400 jobs.
Yeah.
How would you like to read this story if you're applying for those 400 jobs? You know, and Governor Kemp of Georgia laid this out as like this huge benefit to the community, and how the state is really, I guess, like seeking out investments in energy and infrastructure. Well, maybe some conversations need to be had about how things are going to be done differently at this expansion, which is like a $40 million investment for this company. Crazy.
It is crazy. It was, and it was one of those where, and I will say this was, we reached out to the company looking for additional information. They actually got back to us saying, yes, we're going to talk. Just give me a second. And that just went back and forth a few times. And finally the line went dead, And I was just like, oh man, they're, a company's finally going to talk about what they're doing or what happened. And then just silence. Just, I don't know, met one of those media consultants that just said, just don't. Anna, what's your in case you missed it this week?
I selected a story titled, Study Finds Drivers Struggle to Multitask When Using Dashboard Touchscreens.
Was it an Onion headline?
No. I know, like today in the most obvious headline.
Yeah.
But it was based on a real actual study. So the University of Washington combined with Toyota Research Institute, or TRI, they looked to explore how drivers could balance driving and using touchscreens. In the study, the participants drove a vehicle simulator, and they were asked to both interact with the touchscreen and like complete memory tests. They say that the memory test would mimic what it was like to kind of like the amount of effort that was involved in focusing on the road and other distractions while also using this touchscreen. And they found that when people multitask their driving and touchscreen use, both suffered.
Get out of town!
Whoa.
Which is funny to me because I also suck at using my touchscreen, and I feel like I use about 10% of the features on there because I'm always driving, and there's two I can't focus on it. So I'm just like, I'll just be cold, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's I'll just be cold, and I won't call anyone unless they're like one of my 4 favorites.
I know,
because you also have that ability to like hit the button on your steering wheel, and you're just like, call dad, cell, never mind.
I guess I'll die listening to 40s Junction on Sirius XM radio.
There could be worse things,
No, that's true.
Yeah.
So anyway, what they said in the study was that the car drifted more in the lane while people were using touchscreens, and their speed and their accuracy with the screen declined while they were driving. So they said that the effects increased further when they added the memory task. So the results are meant to help guide auto manufacturers in designing safer and more responsive touchscreens and in-car interfaces. And I think I picked the story because as soon as I saw the headline, I was like, duh. But like, I think the more that we...
I had the exact same reaction.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I think the more that we learn about these touchscreens and what I might call over-engineering of the dash and the controls, the more we need to acknowledge that consumer devices and vehicles are two very different things, and they're not the same. They don't need to be the same. I think terms like infotainment just need to be killed.
Yeah.
Because they're used heavily in auto and they're not appropriate.
Yeah.
I think that it needs to end. And like vehicles are getting heavier. You're driving down the highway in like a 6,000 pound Bullet that, at 75 miles per hour. And then you need to make it simple for somebody to turn on the climate control or move their side windows or whatever. Or side mirrors. It seems like we're still kind of prioritizing form over function, and I think we need to be real about what these are actually for, how they actually function, and what we actually need as consumers. Consumers have to stop with the sleek. I mean, it.
Yeah. Well, what is surprising to me is this is very indicative of almost of any pace of change anywhere, particularly in the US, where I remember when the screens were getting bigger and bigger, and it looked like somebody almost had a full-on like dual screen computer dashboard,
Come on,
as
I
you're
know.
passing them. And it's just, people ask questions, like you look at it and you're like, that can't be safe. That has to be distracting. And they're just like, well, we haven't seen the data on it yet. We're going to have to do studies. And it's just like, well, how can you put it in there before we have the study on it? And they're just like, no, it should be fine. And then the study comes out and they're like, you know what? It turns out it's actually really distracting. And you're like,
Yeah,
it is. And I don't know, Jeff, just sometimes it's talking about putting the like cart before the horse. And, we add some of these features and just all around, you're like, kind of seems like a bad idea. And they're like, I don't know, I think people are going to want it. And then what are we, like 5 years later? They're just like, yeah, it's a bad idea.
Well, one thing that, I have a little bit of a head start on you guys. I had kids a little bit earlier. And one thing I've learned is sometimes even when you're right, what you're telling them is not right until they think it that way as well. Okay. So it has to be their idea.
Oh, yeah.
And then what you thought, well, yeah, okay.
Oh,
They'll
yeah.
come around on it. That's almost feels like what this is. Like you had to demonstrate to these people all of this information, the ones that are guilty of using their touch screens way too much and not paying attention to the road, so they can make their own determination and getting on board with what everybody else has been telling them for a long time.
Yeah.
So at least we got that now. We got that going for us,
Just like,
which is nice.
I mean, is the only safety feature that came out after all the data, like the seatbelt? Like where they're just like, you know what?
Yeah, but even that, you had to do a lot of things to prove to people that it was actually beneficial.
Yeah.
Because the big argument there was like, well, if I'm in an accident, how do I get out of the car? I'm not lying.
Yeah, no.
Real.
I've seen.
You had to show people the research and actually get them on board with it.
No, there are all these old news reports where they interview people on the street and they're just like, never putting it on. You can't make me. And it was just like, all right, what is it going to take?
It had to become their idea.
Yeah. That's actually a very good point. And I do eagerly wait for that moment when my kids start realizing that. Maybe if
It never happens.
Maybe if only for
never
one
happens.
thing I was right.
Numerous times. Wow, you know what I figured out? I should do it this way. Wow. Only said that 3 years ago. Anyway.
What's your in case you missed it?
All right, so I know sometimes Anna gets a little freaked out by these cybersecurity stories, so I'm
can
not
handle it.
trying to scare anybody here. Okay?
right.
fine. I'm gonna call you at midnight when
That's
I can't
what-
sleep.
Yeah, that's what people say right before they scare you.
Okay.
All right.
So I picked an article, Manufacturing's Legacy Forms Are Leaking Data. This was submitted by Frank Balonis. He works at a company called Kiteworks. They're somebody who's very in tune to OT, cybersecurity, and a lot of things going on in manufacturing plants. And one of the things that he noticed is that manufacturers have a lot of forms that are out there. They're digitally submitted, whether it's to the consumer, talking about warranty stuff, whether it's bringing suppliers on board, invoices, all of these other things. And they were typically created a while ago. And because they're still asking for the same information, they haven't really been updated to new platforms that have security as a priority or embedded security processes. And you may think this is not a big deal. And that's the way a lot of manufacturers think. And it's kind of a problem here because we're looking at this can contain financial information, credit card information, all of this types of personal information. And what he found out is there's a new study that says roughly 85% of manufacturing organizations experience at least one form-related security incident in the past 2 years. 42% confirmed a data breach, specifically from these forms, because again, they were difficult to create. They were made 15 to 20 years ago, and all the security insights that we have now were not implemented when they created these forms and they kept using them. Furthermore, 58% of these forms collect financial information. 61% capture authentication credentials or login stuff. 36% have credit card information. So a lot of data out there, and the bad guys have figured out how to get into these, where the repository of information for these forms, where all this is being collected. They get in there, they steal it, they use it for nefarious purposes. The reason I wanted to bring this one up is, while this is a big problem, number one, nobody's paying attention to it because why would you?
Yeah.
It's a form. It's a form you're filling out. Yeah. Hey, we're working with these guys. Here's the link to the form. This way you're in our supplier database. You're in our CRM. We're all good to go. We can work together without any issues. So you don't think about it. The other thing is there's readily available fixes out there. This isn't one of the harder ones to fix. Now it's a pain because it takes time to go back and identify all these forms that are out there and bring them into a secure environment, but it can be done.
Yeah.
It's something that is much more manageable than a lot of the other security elements that we talk about in security breach are here. So great thing to bring up, and also a very manageable solution.
Are these all like homemade or something they had custom made forms that are sort of on their back end? Or like if you use like a form stack or another form provider, because I would assume that if you're using a third party to create these forms, that they're kind of keeping up with the times.
See, typically not. This is going to be stuff that you want to create so that all that data is taken right into your system.
Yeah.
Okay. So typically this would not be a different piece of software. This is something that, you've created internally or somebody created for you, but it's all connected internally because you want all that data flowing right into your systems.
Yeah. Anna, another week, another new vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
We should just come to terms with the fact that all of our data is going to be out there or already is.
Yeah, I know.
Like the dark web knows more about us than we know about ourselves at this point.
Yeah, I think my identity has been stolen many, many times, and I'm fine with it.
This is where we need like that LifeLock sponsorship. Let's tell you about LifeLock.
Is that still a thing?
I think, I think so. Yeah. All right. What are your thoughts on the newest potential security breach?
I think it was a good one to bring up because, to your point, like it's not as heavy of a lift for everybody to try to get their arms around this, and anything you can do to kind of whack some of those moles.
Well, that's 100% it. You just want to discourage it and make the hacker's job as hard as possible. Let's take away some of the low-hanging fruit. Yeah. And that's kind of where his point is with these forms. And some of his frustration comes out in the article, and you can appreciate it because it's like, guys, we're not paying attention to this one. And
for sure,
and we can definitely handle it.
Well, but I get it. Like, I mean, it's kind of a common thing that comes up when it comes to any of these vulnerabilities is that there are so many of them. It's anything that's connected, and it's hard to take inventory of these types of vulnerabilities. And so when you see one more, you're just like, oh, I thought I had them all. Man, that form from 86 is leaving us open. Let's jump into our final thoughts before we get out of here this week. Anna, what's your final thought?
So I came up with either a genius parenting hack or like maybe the laziest thing I've ever done.
Nice.
But usually Christmas Eve is like the day where my kids are like going crazy in the house and can't, then they're just like into everything. And I want to keep my house clean on Christmas Eve because we are hosting a family dinner.
Oh, all right.
So we have a lot of hotel points. So we just booked a hotel room for Christmas Eve. Not because we're going to stay there, but because they have a really great pool at this hotel. So we're just going to take the kids to the pool for like the night before and then the next entire morning.
That's awesome.
Just to keep them out of the house so they don't touch anything. So hack, lazy, I don't know.
So wait, the hotel on Christmas Eve?
Christmas Eve.
Well, yeah.
Christmas Eve. Oh,
Christmas Eve night, and then the next day.
Okay.
We have access to the pool until like 2:00.
I think that's just a great idea.
Yeah, it's borderline genius.
Yeah, I might
Thanks.
probably
Yeah.
like depending on how far behind we are at that point.
Yeah.
I might
Good
steal that
idea, Chris.
Yeah. Oh, how dare you?
Rude. Chris is just executing this plan.
You're going to be at home, like
no, I'm
crashing out.
I'm gonna be at work.
Yeah,
that's right.
That is. Yes, we will. If you need to reach us, we will be here on Christmas Eve until at least 11 a.m.
Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. I might
Let's not put that out there.
Yeah, I might set that out of office to trigger early.
Sooner than that. Yeah.
My final thought this week is, first of all, I want to send out a special thank you to our YouTube community. This week we passed 11,000 subscribers, and it only continues to climb. So we're very appreciative for everyone that continues to support us, all of our brands, and the Today in Manufacturing podcast. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. We all really appreciate it. I feel like we're building this community together, and it's really been great. That said, we'll see you in 2 weeks because given the nature of how the two holidays are going to fall, we're going to take the next 2 weeks off, mostly because it's going to be impossible to get any combination of four of us together.
Correct.
In the next 2 weeks. So we will see you. The plan is to record. We're going to go live Monday, January 5th, and we'll push it out to our communities on the 6th. So you can either join us live on the 5th or it'll come to you on Tuesday, the 6th. And you might want to tune in because I don't know if you guys noticed this, but the next one, the big episode 250. 250 episodes.
Wow.
And that's like a podcast threshold that like you're pushed into another classification when you make that many episodes, especially with consistency. So thank you guys so much for putting up with my many, many, many eccentricities when it comes to this podcast. And thank you to producer Eric for everything he does as well. And, the extended family as well. Andy Zoll, Ben Munson, Nolan Beilstein, everyone that works together to help this keep going. Jeff, did you know we were on 250? And
I did.
Yeah.
I saw 240. Well, only because I saw 249.
Yeah.
Last time.
And then you just added the one.
Oh, yeah. Now I get it.
It's that math again, Jeff. What's your final thought this week?
Nothing crazy. Just, having some conversations about ice fishing and when that's coming. I guess this kind of lumps together with the whole holidays and stuff. Like, be patient. Take your time.
Yes.
Be safe. Like we hear every year it's about this time. Somebody goes out on the ice too soon and bad things happen. Just be smart. Apply that to everything, I guess, this time of year. So
yeah, there's a lot of metaphorical bad ice out there. So,
well said.
Proceed with caution.
Very true.
Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Anna, Jeff, or David at in.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. And subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can join us every Thursday when we go live or on January 5th. All right. For Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you in 3 weeks.